Ladies and gentlemen, as we've gone through all we've been through in the last year, the question comes up is, what's next? What are we going to do next? We've all heard we don't get many second chances in life. Well, that's not true. It's never too late to discover a passion or a new passion and pivot into that area. For many of us, that pivot occurs after some kind of life-altering event, the loss of a job, through COVID, a heartbreak, a divorce, death of a loved one, or maybe staring down a deadly disease. Yet with all this misfortune, those who did not fall apart or give up, who picked up the pieces and kept moving forward, they're grateful for all the little things that happened to them. And they're using this as a second chance to help others. So the question to you, ladies and gentlemen, is what's next? Now, my guest today is Connie Bramer, and Connie is that person. Connie has survived divorce and breast cancer. She's a business owner. She's an author of her own book, multiple books now. She was a contributing author to the best-selling book, Crappy to Happy. She has her own book, How Connie Got Her Rack Back, which is a great story. She'll talk about that later. She has started a foundation, a nonprofit foundation called GYRB for cancer patients. And on top of all of that, she has pivoted and is moving into changing her career into a life coach, and she's going through the process. And we're going to get into that in a great deal. The other thing she does, as if that's not enough, is she has a Facebook page called Laughter and Inspiration. And that's the first thing I do every morning. I get up and I look at that so that I can start the day off with a smile. So Connie, welcome to Life Altering Events.
Thank you for having me, Frank. It's so good to see you again. It's been a long time.
Yeah, it's been a while. I read your stuff and I keep up with you through all your publications. Now, Connie, you're a master at pivoting. I've watched you in awe of how you've pivoted. And you told me about your various college majors and what you went through and how you ended up working in the auto business and now moving on into this life journey. Tell us about this journey. What's caused you all these pivots?
Well, one thing I will tell you is that a setback is a setup for a comeback. And that's something I've always thought of in my life. So whatever's faced me, I've thought, well, I'm pivoting. That's my what's next. That's what we were just talking about. What's next? Mm-hmm. So I went to college and I was a biology major and I was having far too much fun, probably dancing on tables, drinking too much beer. And then I decided, maybe that isn't what I want to do. So I ended up becoming a psychology and music double major. And my dad said to me, he goes, Connie, what are you doing? Like, you're not going to make enough money when you get out of school. So I finished my psychology major. And I was going to graduate school for counseling, and I was going for college counseling. I was the one that they came to say, hey, what class should I take next? Oh, this is the professor that never shows up. Just go to this one, right? So I was like the young one that they came to. I had a graduate internship, which was amazing. And it got canceled. It was an assistantship, so I was actually paid. And then they canceled it, and it kind of made me move and pivot to something else. So I started working with the developmentally disabled at that point. And then my mom was sick with cancer, with breast cancer. She'd been diagnosed when I was a sophomore in college, just finishing my sophomore year of college. So actually I was a junior going into college. And my family owns a car dealership. And I never, ever, ever thought one time of ever working there. It just wasn't something I saw. It was like I hate to say it, but a man's world. It wasn't something that I saw. Like, my dad didn't have women salespeople, had women in the office. I just didn't think it was something for me. And it never even occurred to me, Frank, ever. And my dad had hired a friend of our family, his son, who was a little younger than myself, and he was selling cars and he was killing it. He just was doing well. And it takes away from what you assume, and I don't mean to stereotype, but the typical car salesman, is an older gentleman, maybe gray at the temples kind of thing. That's what people think of in their mind. Right. Or like their hair is greased back. I mean, it's horrible. My industry gets a bad rap and it doesn't need to. It's, terrible in that way. But, that's what you think of, right?
Right, exactly.
So my dad, I came by one time and I was actually going back to school to take my prerequisite courses for med school because I had done too much partying in college. Sorry, Mom and Dad, but I did. And then I ended up taking those classes and I was getting paid to sleep for a living, which my father could not even believe this. And I was staying at a residence home with the developmentally disabled. And in the morning, I would give them their medication. So my dad would say, I cannot believe I put this girl through 4 years of college and she's sleeping for a living.
Hey.
So, but you know what? Hey, kudos to me. I worked it out,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
So I stopped at my dealership to see my mom, and my dad said, hey, how about you sit right there and sell cars? And I'm like, I don't know, Dad. I don't know. And it was working out really well with this young man he had hired. So he kind of talked me into it. He says, give it a whirl. So I was actually at this point sleeping overnight at this residence house, which was an hour from the dealership. Then in the morning, I got up and went to the dealership. And then at night, I took classes on my way home, a class for biochemistry or whatever. I hit physics, whatever I had to take. And then I would go and do the repetition. It was like this constant 24-hour circle. Right. And the only way I caught up on sleep was I got paid to sleep. It's been, almost 30 years. And I think to myself, I can't believe I got paid to sleep.
I know. How can I get that job again?
I know. So anyway, and it was lovely. I love the population I was working with. They were such great souled people. They were really wonderful people. So anyway, my dad asked me to come work for him. So I really liked it. And I was making money. And, it's interesting when you're making money and you're seeing the fruits of your labor, you kind of get, I don't want to say sucked in, but you get drawn in. Yeah. I'm making a paycheck. Do I want to go to school? So my mom got really very ill with her breast cancer, and it was a wonderful time that I could spend with my mom. Like when we were younger, Frank, before the deregulation of telecom, our phone bills were, off the chain crazy, right?
Yep.
So when I moved back to be near my home and went and worked came to work for my dad and my mom, my dad was thrilled that my phone bill wasn't off the chain, because it was, he'd be like, do you really have to talk to your mother an hour a day? Because my mom really was my bestie. When you grow up, you get through that teenage awkward time, you graduate college, and then you see your parents kind of as people, yep. And you end up relating with my mom and I were really super tight. She would breathe life into any room. I mean, she just lit it up. You can't even explain it, Frank, but people who knew her would just say that's exactly what she did. So I enjoyed that time with my mom. So working for my dad, I had this time that I never would have had every single day with my parents. Mm-hmm. And not to say we didn't have disagreements. My dad and I went at it a little bit. We're both a little type A, but we worked together at our family business, and it was important to me. My brother worked there. My brother was in the service department. I was, running the sales department at one time. Started finance department there. So that kind of has led me to the trajectory of where I am today with my business, with my car business. So that's how it came to be where I'm in the car business. It's normally you don't see a woman say, oh, I'm in the car business. Well, how did you get there?
Right.
Who put you there? What spaceship dropped you in the middle of a dealership lot and said, go to work? So I actually go to different dealerships and I work with them to help them improve their systems. And I train finance managers in the automotive industry. So that's what I do for my job.
Right. Now we're pivoting again.
We're pivoting again. Yes.
All right. Go into this, the pivoting into the coaching.
Well, before the coaching, let me talk about the foundation first.
Okay.
So I was diagnosed with cancer just after my 39th birthday. Mm-hmm. I was just a few minutes after my divorce, really few minutes, like a couple months, literally. It was done. Boom, cancer. Here you go, sister. You got breast cancer. And I know you asked me once, like, what did I think or what did I say perhaps out loud? Mm-hmm. And I hope it's okay I say this, but you can say it. They said, I think I'm 99%. The radiologist came in, I had the extra mammogram, I had the ultrasound. So I was diagnosed with breast cancer with an ultrasound. And she said, I'm 99% sure you have breast cancer. And I looked at her and I go, are you shitting me right now? Like, that's literally what I said. Like, who thinks you're going to get breast cancer at 39?
Right, exactly.
And I mean, I knew it. And I had a great interview when I was doing my podcast last year, and I had it with Dr. Bernie Siegel.
Yep.
And he told me, because I said, I kind of was waiting for it to come. And I know that might sound quite ominous, but I'm the fourth generation of my family maternally to have breast cancer. And he said, well, that's not right that you say that you're waiting for it. I go, well, it just kind of happens. You think you might get it, but I certainly didn't think I was going to have it at 39. That was just, way out there. I wasn't thinking that. So I had breast cancer, went through my journey. I started a Caring Bridge website because, for me, fortunately, I have wonderful family and friends who wanted to know, like, basically every day how I was doing. And instead of having your phone ring off the hook, it's really wonderful to have a Caring Bridge website. And I recommend that for anyone going through any type of illness, because you can write on there, people get a login and password. So anytime that you write something, they get an email, you can get a notification. And then they get on, read where you're at to check in, and then they write you back. So I didn't know it at the time, but it really kind of became my therapy, my support group from afar. And if knowing me, I always have to find, the snarky side of the story, like I'm not really, I can be serious, but most of my friends, call me, Calamity Connie, or, the comedic reason to hang around. But I wrote a lot of things that were funny to me. And there's a lot of weird stuff, but I wrote a lot of comical things in my story, like my oncologist after my second chemo said, well, how did it go? I'm like, what do you mean, how did it go? I go, if I'd had, the Apollo 13 astronaut pill to end it, I would have taken it, hands down. He goes, what are you talking about? Astronauts have pills? Like, do you live under a rock? Have you not seen like an Apollo 13 movie, or anything? Or the Mars movie where they had the pill and they're thinking, do I take it? I said, that's how I felt, So in my Caring Bridge website, I just wanted to tell the real story of cancer. Because, what's behind the curtain of Oz, right? People, you look at someone, you see that they might be ill, they're wearing a scarf, now I'm very in tune to see what's a wig. Like now I've got wig radar now, so I can tell what's a wig. And, I just think that people need to see what really people think. Like, what does a cancer patient think? So that was really why I was writing this. And I was writing it for me, just to put it out there, to have some laughs and to hear from my family and friends. But when I was done and I was finished with my chemo, I had, I've talked, I've had 13 breast cancer related surgeries. I had about 6 months of chemo, which I would not like to repeat ever.
Right.
Any of it, actually. But if you told me I had to have more chemo or I could have surgery, I'd be like, who's my anesthesiologist? Because it's just not fun.
Right.
So when I was done, my one friend, Renee, she said to me, listen, Con, I really think if you wrote this and put it in a book, like a compilation of something, I think it would help a lot of people get through cancer, or even to know what their loved one's going through, because, you kind of write like a guidebook. So I spent about a year. The kids were 9 and 10 at the time, because they were 7 and 8 when I had cancer. And they were 9 and 10, 10, 11 in that age range when I started to write it. And I would say to them, listen to me, unless you're bleeding or dying, do not bother me for the next hour so I can write. I mean, you know how it is to write, Frank.
Absolutely.
You got to be in the zone. And then when you're in the zone, it's verbal vomit, like for hours.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So I'm like, I'm verbal vomiting right now. Do not enter my room, So I took about a year, wrote the book. And when I got done with it, I was at a pool. We have a town pool. I was at one of the town pools, and I was on the picnic table and I'm writing. My daughter comes over and I just sat back and she's like, Mom, what's up? I go, I think I just wrote the last piece of my book. I think I just finished it. And it was such a sense of peace. I mean, you know how it is when you write a book. It's like a labor of love. And, you pour your heart and your soul into it, but we always get something out of it. Right, Frank? Like there's something at the end, it's not, maybe not an aha moment, but it's a relief, relief even, So for me at that point, the what's next for me, and I actually thought about it when I was having my treatments, is how can I help people get through this crap, And I remember one of my friends from high school used to have meals delivered to me. And I didn't, like, my doorbell would ring, ding dong, and then, food would appear. And he did it like mysteriously. And I'm that type A personality. I'm like on my carrying bridge. I'm like, who sent me the food? I need to know. And somebody sent me chocolate covered strawberries, which are my
weakness.
It's pretty bad for me. So anyway, I was like, who sent me the chocolate covered strawberries? Nobody would come forward. It's been, what is it, 12 years now? Still the mystery. Don't know who sent the chocolate covered strawberries. I wonder if I'll know that on my deathbed. Somebody will say, I sent them to you.
I'm the guy.
Right? So I just wanted to pay it forward. So because he sent meals to me, I thought, there's a lot of families who, I was a single mom and still am. And for me, like cooking, when you don't feel well, it's really a challenge.
Yep.
I mean, my kids and I, we ate a lot of Stouffer's mac and cheese. And my kids were like, Mom, what's for dinner? I'm like, how about you take a guess? Stouffer's mac and cheese. Because it was one of the things that tasted good to me. Because when you have chemo, you have that awful metal taste in your mouth and it's just nothing tastes good, And it's kind of a funny story. My son, like these kids, you know how when your kids are little, they always know when to ask you a question because you're on the phone.
Exactly.
Right. So I used to do Zoom meetings or go-to meetings. I was doing a go-to meeting. I'm in my dining room at the time. And I was going through my chemo just at the end by Easter. It was like around Easter. So we had those little robin eggs, the little robin egg things. So Alex, my son, holds a bag up and goes, and I go, 2. I go, 2. Well, the little stinker ate them all and left me 2. And that's what I ate, like one off here and there to help with a metallic taste in my mouth. So there's little things that I learned along the way to tell people. So my foundation, I started after a couple years, 2-3 years of fundraising for other organizations. And I wanted to know the people we were helping. I wanted to say, hey, listen, you give me money, you live in this zip code or you live in this town, that money is going to go right back to a patient in your neighborhood. So really it's like the anonymity of not knowing who you're helping, but it could perhaps be someone that you are, behind in the grocery store. You don't know, right? But it's going back in the community. So one of the things that I do is I personally write a letter to every patient we help, and we help all cancer patients, men, women, and children with all types of cancers. And my book is called How Connie Got Her Rack Back, as you mentioned. And I had these events called Get Your Rack Back events. So we decided, my kids and I, we thought, what are we going to name the organization, the nonprofit? And my daughter Alyssa's like, well, Mom, everyone knows she's the Get Your Rack Back chick. Just call it Get Your Rack Back. So that's why we named it Get Your Rack Back, but we shortened it to GYRB because we didn't want everyone to think it's just about breast cancer.
Right.
So it's about all cancer. So I write a letter to each one of the patients. I put a basket together for the women. The men don't care about baskets unless they tell me.
Right.
But I put in like M&Ms, or juicy fruit gum. And I put in like a nice soft pair of, socks and lotion and just things that, make you feel good. And then each patient receives $500 in services, and it can either be, gas and grocery gift cards, medical co-payment assistance. And because it's my foundation, I can go off the rails a little bit. And we've helped people with staying in a hotel before they have a procedure. One woman was afraid to drive in, after having to have like a CAT scan where you drink all the stuff, which, by the way, that's not fun either. And I said, well, yeah, we'll put her up in the hotel. So we can do some things. We paid an oil bill for one patient who didn't have enough money to pay heat for her house. So we try to do things to help people.
Expand on that story. I've heard it before. I want the listeners to hear that with how you got that bill paid.
Well, what happened was, and it's kind of unorthodox, but I reached out to the oil company and I told the gentleman who I was, and I said, I'm calling on behalf of this customer of yours who is ill with cancer and I want to pay her bill for her. I have $500. Is that enough to cover it? And he said, actually, it's a little bit more, because he wouldn't tell me how much it was. Right. Yes. I mean, obviously it's privacy, right?
Right.
It's like HIPAA in the oil industry.
Exactly.
So anyway, I told him the circumstances and I said, is there any way you could help her out, a little? So he actually waived the remainder of her bill for her. I paid the $500 on behalf of my foundation to the gentleman. And so she had heat for the winter. And it's just things like that, because, I knew my foundation wasn't going to cure cancer. We're not going to find the root of cancer. We're not going to find some magic shot, right? So I knew that people are faced with certain situations on a daily basis. And there's so many patients that are having to choose between paying for their groceries for their family, being able to put food on the table, and paying for their medicine and their treatment. So I didn't want to have people make that choice. I mean, honestly, $500 is not a lot of money, but we've helped over 300 people with that. And, it adds up, but it's a little bit, and it does relieve people.
It absolutely does.
It has been a bigger gift to me and those who are part of my organization than it's been to the people we've helped, because I always tell people, if you want to feel good and do something to pivot, what's next? Volunteer, do something to give back to people, because that's how you fill your cup.
Right. Absolutely. And it's more than just money that you give. I've seen your Christmas events, and talk a little about some of the events that you do.
Well, we normally have a gala, and we haven't had one in a couple of years, obviously due to the COVID situation at the moment. We have a golf tournament. We didn't have that last year. I don't believe we're going to have it again this year, but we've had 3 or 4 of those annually. We also have our Diamonds in December event, and I have wonderful friends who own a jewelry store, Hoff Jewelers, and they donate a piece of diamond jewelry, and we kind of raffle it off. We do a cool thing where we put a different piece of jewelry in a bunch of different boxes, and people have to pick their box. They pay $50 for the box. That's our fundraiser part. And then at a certain point in the evening, we give out the boxes. They unwrap their boxes at one time. Everyone gets a piece of jewelry in it, but 1 or 2 pieces might be diamonds. Diamonds.
Wow.
So we've had such wonderful time doing that. And that is actually the launch of our holiday stocking drive. So people bring stocking stuffers, and then we stuff stockings the following day and distribute them to all of our oncology offices and hospitals, and for their children, for the patients' kids, or children who are affected by cancer themselves, or a sibling, or their parents. And, when I first started this foundation, my dream was if we could help 2 people a month, that'd be awesome, Well, now, and that was with 2 offices. Now we have over 22 offices and hospitals. And this is since 2015 when I started the foundation. So it's been a whirlwind journey. And so far we've delivered over 2,000 holiday stockings.
Great. How wonderful.
Children's hospital. So it's been, it's really that's what people really care about, are the kids. And that's, because like my kids talk to other children who've had parents that have cancer, and they can relate to it, because you might be the patient going through it, but you have your family, and especially kids are resilient, but they still know what's going on.
Right. And they see it, and they have the fear.
Right.
And I've talked with, I was a medic in the military, and we saw a lot of death as a military medic and suffering. And what you would see is the loss of the day-to-day stuff. You can deal with the big catastrophic, as hard as it is, you can deal with the big catastrophic thing. It's okay, now we're not going to go to the beach this year, or we're not going to have Christmas, or we're not going to have all these things. And it makes what you're going through more manageable when you bring stuff the way you do, the way your organization does, and it makes them smile, and it gives them some sense of renewed normalcy, if that's the right word.
Right. And that's what we try to do. And that's one thing, the other day, someone reached out to me and said, my friend I found out she has breast cancer. What do I do? So I, gave tips on a few things that might be able to go by for her, just to, let her know he's thinking of her, kind of thing. But the most important thing that I would say to anybody who's got a friend or family member with cancer is they just want to live a normal life. My friends would come over, and I say, well, tell me what's going on. And they'd say, well, I feel so stupid, telling you, what happened at work, or some stupid thing on a date or whatever, because what you're going through. I said, well, can I just tell you, I don't want to talk about chemotherapy all day. I want to talk about, I want to hear something funny. I want to hear what's going on in your life. So I think people often, just because they don't know what to do, they tiptoe around people who have an illness. You're not going to say, hey, what's your prognosis? I mean, that was my favorite question. And I'd be like, well, I don't think I'm going to die today, but, I'll keep you posted. Right. I used to hate that question. But if you come to me, when I was sick, I would just be like, can we just talk about fun stuff?
Right.
I mean, I got to just tell you this one story because I went and got I love spray tans because I don't tan because I don't want to get cancer. I already had that once. So anyway, I had finished my chemo, and this is just kind of the antics that I have engaged in. Okay. So I go to get a spray tan. I am completely bald. I have no idea on God's green earth why I decided to pick up the hairnet thing and put it on. I put it on, Frank. I got in the booth, sprayed me all up. I get out and I'm like, why did I put this thing on my head? So I go out, I get home, right? And I laugh. Like, I'm laughing in the car. They probably think I belong in an insane asylum. I'm laughing all the way home. I have my wig on my head. I'm thinking, I cannot believe I just did that. So I go out to my mailbox to get my mail, and one of my neighbors came down the street, and she was one who was so wonderful. I had wonderful neighbors that would come and like take my kids someplace, or they would pick them up at their after school program. I mean, friends are amazing,
Yes.
and you really find out who your true friends are. But I walk out to the mailbox and I said, Kim, I got to show you something. I go, you got to come in the house. She comes in the house. I flagged her down. And I get in my dining room and I take the wig off, and I am like tan and then white. And she's like, what the hell did you do? I go, I went and got a spray tan. And I go, I don't know why I put the thing on my head. But I wrote about things like that in my book because, and just like I have my own blog, the humor of it all, because life is too funny not to write about it.
Absolutely. There are so many funny stories. And it let's humanize this thing. And we've gone through tragedies, and people tend to either avoid you because they don't know what to say, or if they do see you, they talk over you to someone that you're with, right? How is she doing? Well, my brother was paralyzed in a car accident. People would talk to the person who was with him, and he'd say, I'm right here. Talk to me. Don't treat me different. I want to live as normal a life as possible. And you do that. You bring that out. And some of the stories are just hysterical. And people are able to say, okay, yes, this is a terrible thing, but I'm going to get through it.
Well, laughter is the best medicine. Really.
By far.
If I did not have a sense of humor, I mean, even what we're going through right now with COVID and, depression and lockdowns and all these things that people are feeling, it's crucial that we find things to laugh about and have some levity. And that really holds true for people who have an illness. Like, you really need to, even if you have to dig deep. I mean, let's face it, in my house, the comedy is always on me,
Yes.
like we're always laughing at me. It's not like I'm finding something else to laugh about. I'm very big into self-deprecating humor.
Yes. I've found that out over the years.
Yeah.
And the even funny things come out of COVID. I read something you wrote about you're on a Zoom call and the kids are home because they were in college, but now they're not. So everybody's back home again, and you're running out and making this announcement, and they're in class and a professor's talking.
Yeah. Yeah. So my daughter is a nursing student, and she was home last semester. And so, I have my little office. My son's in his room with his headphones on. He's either gaming or actually in a class. I don't even know. So Alyssa is downstairs at the kitchen island, and it's just loud. She's got her computer up all the way. I don't know what she's listening to. And I'm on a Zoom call, and I'm like, I said to whoever was with, I go, can you just hang on 1 second? So I mute myself on the Zoom. I go out and I go, can you just turn that shit down? And then I hear the professor go, oh, who was that? And Alyssa goes, I'm in my class. I was like, oh my God. Because the professor had the worst voice too. She's like, Alyssa, like, you have to do this. And I was thinking, who is that? What is that shit you're listening to?
That's great. I love that. So
now I only have one kid home. So Alex is home until the end of this semester. I got him all set with his apartment next semester we're at college. Mm-hmm. So I will be back to empty nest him next fall, or this coming fall. And it's so funny because, we talk about the what's next, and that's like what we're going to talk about with my
exactly.
So, I've thought about that a lot because our whole lives, we have a what's next, like every day. Mm-hmm. Like, there's always always some new thing that we should be doing, trying new direction, a pivot type of situation. Well, before COVID hit, I was a brand new empty nester. You know, my kids are a year apart. They're now a sophomore and junior in college. So when it hit, I had a freshman and a senior, or a freshman and sophomore in college. Yeah. See, I can't even do math anymore, Frank. So anyway, like it took me a while to get used to it. I mean, when my son's home, you don't even know he's alive until he comes down and you hear the refrigerator open. I mean, that's just how he is.
Classic boy.
You know, how you doing, Alex? How was school today? Good. How are your classes going? Okay. Like that's kind of it, right? And then the other one that was home, when she was home, she's like, Mom, you're never gonna believe this shit. Blah, 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 blah. Like she's like that, right? So missing her out of the house, it was like you could hear a pin drop in my house, right? And then when he went, I'm just home with two dogs, like having one-sided conversations with two dogs. So I was just kind of getting in the groove, Frank, of being on my own, because I haven't been on my own since before I had kids. You know what I mean? Like quiet.
Yep, I remember.
And then all of a sudden, they were back. They were back. And I have to, it's been hard for these kids. They've missed out on a lot of things.
Yeah, they have.
But I have to say that they have adjusted well. I mean, we got into a groove in my house and, we get along really well. There were no issues. It was just trying to be mindful of when someone is in a class so you don't yell, or someone's on a Zoom for work, right. So we worked it all out. But, it was, and in retrospect, it's time that I normally would not have had with my kids. I mean, normally you think about it, they go to college. It's like the first part of the stepping away from mom and dad type situation, right? And then they graduate from college, and then it's like this. I think college for parents is this way to adjust to the separation that's to come, right?
I would agree with that, having been through it. Yes.
It's the first separation. And you get used to that separation, talking to them here, you go from seeing your kid every day, and then all of a sudden, you get like a 2-minute phone call once a week, right? And when we were kids, when I was a kid in college, the phone would ring. I would call my parents, collect. They'd not accept the charges, and then they call back the payphone. Yes. Right. Now you look at colleges, my daughter's like, what's the hole there for? I go, well, once upon a time, there were phones there that we had to pay, a quarter or 10 cents to talk into. So now these kids with FaceTime, they can call you, or they text you, call you anytime. I mean, I just actually, when Alex is away, I just send him a text and say, just, send me back a poop emoji just so I know you're alive, But it's that transition, right? And then they leave college and they're done, and then they're gone. So really the time that we've had as parents with kids who have been in college age that have had to come home due to COVID is time that we would never have with them in the future, unless they were like the 25-year-olds that moved back home and, slept in the basement, which the jury's out. That could happen, Frank.
It still could.
Still could happen.
It's amazing. It's something where you've always kept a gratitude journal. You've talked about this and written about it. And watching COVID come through, so many people got so bitter and are still bitter over this. And you've written a number of articles about the changes you made during COVID, just to reach out and touch your kids or your friends. So what, out of all the nonsense we've been through, what are you most grateful for that came out of this?
Well, I think the funny thing that happened to me was I just would wake up and say, oh, I'm thinking of this person, right? And normally life goes on. You think about the person, you don't shoot them a text or call them, you just go on with your day. I just have made it a point, and I want to continue it, not just because of COVID, but when I think of someone, I send them a text. Hey, listen, I'm thinking you, love you. Hope you're doing well. Reach out if you have time, kind of thing. And now, so I wrote like this thing on Facebook one day, and I said, look, if you are my good friend, and all of a sudden out of the blue, you get a weird text that says, hey, thinking of you, love you. If you know me, that's not an odd text, right?
Correct.
But, I kind of, I sent it out to the masses, Frank. I was like, just be prepared. You might be hearing from me. So every day I try to reach out to someone that I haven't connected with.
Mhm.
And it's been a really wonderful thing to do, because normally we're also wrapped up in our own lives. We're doing our own thing. And we did go through times of lockdown. I mean, some people are still dealing with that. I mean, I'm working from home currently right now. I mean, I go out a little bit, but not much. Not traveling extensively like I used to. I used to travel like 800 to 1,000 miles a week,
Mhm.
So my car's pretty happy about that.
Yeah, I bet it is.
Yeah. So Bessie's pretty happy about
Bessie's
that.
the car.
Bessie's my car. But anyway, I just made it a point to say, hey, listen, I'm going to reach out to somebody every day, whether it's a text, an email, a phone call. And I feel like we all need to have that touch on each other, even though it's not physical touch. Like I'm a hugger, it's hard to like to see people when you're like,
yeah.
And my kids, I'm like, give your mother a hug. And they're like, oh my God, Mom, like another, I'm like, I need a hug. And it's very isolating. And I think about some people, thank God I did have my kids home. I think I would have been, pretty loony if I had no kids home
Mm-hmm.
during this whole time, and been by my lonesome. It would have been really difficult. So I think I've learned from this that, we need to be there for each other, be there for one another and reach out. Like when someone pops in your mind, shoot them a text, because most people have said to me, that was really great that you did that, because I needed that today.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Last night I got a phone call from a friend of mine that I have not talked to literally since we graduated from college. So we graduated this year, 30 years. Yes, to my kids, I am old. I know. My son keeps telling me, he's like, Mom, you are super old. I go, I get it. You're going to be here too someday. But he was the first friend that I met at orientation in college. Like when you first step on the college, you go to your dorm to figure stuff out. Like your stuff was 17, and he's the first friend I made. And we just kind of picked up where we left off. His family's doing well, and he just got done with a cancer journey. And he wanted to connect. And I didn't know. And it was just really nice to chat with someone. And he texted me after. He goes, this like made my soul feel good, to chat with you. And I go, it does. Like, and that's what I want to have happen with everyone that's in my life. Like, just reach out. So now I'm finding that my friends too are doing that. Like one of my sorority sisters reached out to me. She said, hey, popped in my mind. Just want to say hello and love you. And it makes your day.
It does.
So why can't you make someone's day? It's like such a little thing.
It's that lack of socialization that we lost.
It's a killer.
And we're social beings. You have to have it. Yeah. And even if it's a text or FaceTime or a phone call, which nobody seems to do anymore, but you have to do that reach out and to find people, particularly now, because there's so many people who said, I may have said this in the beginning, there's got to be something more. There's got to be something better.
Right.
Do I want to go back to my old life? Was I even happy?
Right. Right. And that's kind of the crux of why I thought, I'm already doing this, my foundation. And that really fulfills me. I'm very passionate about helping others, and having cancer put me in this laser focused center of, what do I want to do? What do I want to do with that energy and that passion? And I found it. It is hard at times, like I wrote that article about grief, and there's a lot of grief, there's a lot of sadness, but there's a lot of joy and jubilation and helping others. But I wanted to find something else that wasn't just always about cancer, and I don't want to diminish it in any way, Frank, because it's important what I'm doing. To me, it is. And to others, I know is helping people, but I needed to go off in another area. So I have my psychology degree. I'm analyzing you right now. Just wanted to let you know. And I have part of my master's done, but I have 2 kids in college right now. So I thought, what can I do, that would make me be in this position to help others, put me in the spot. And I ended up saying, I'll, get my life coaching certification.
Mm-hmm.
So the crux of my practice is going to be, what's next? Where, are you trying to get out of are you in an unhappy relationship? Are you going through a divorce? What's next after that? What's next after an illness? What's next after your kids leave for college? Every part of your life has a what's next.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm seeing it in the business side so much, particularly with women. There's so many women leaving the workforce, particularly if they have younger children because of that additional burden. And I hear that all the time. Well, what do I do now? What's next? Where do I go?
Right.
And interacting with somebody like you, who's had such a wide variety of experiences, could be the difference that sets them off on a whole new track.
Well, I'm hoping that, my goal is to help people figure out what's next for them. And it might not, I'm not talking about relationships and that stuff. It's like, I think what COVID has forced us all to do is be a little introspective and say, am I really doing what makes me happy in my life right now? Like, do I really like I know I need a job and I need a paycheck. Is it fulfilling me?
Mm-hmm.
Is it making me feel whole? Is it something that I'm getting joy out of? Where's the joy? So my hope is that with my practice of what's next is helping people figure out for themselves. Coaching is not about, counseling. It's about helping people direct themselves and be held accountable to themselves. And to me, if I could hold you accountable to what your goals are and how to get there, set out a plan, set out a path. I think a lot of people have goals and then they're like, well, I don't know how to get there. How do I set the path in motion? And I think right now, like what you and I were talking about earlier is, we're all trying to figure out, what are we doing? When you sit home for an extended period of time during these lockdowns, I think a lot of people say, am I doing what really makes me happy inside? What would make me happy inside? And I think some people don't allow themselves to think outside that box that they're in. And that's really what I want to help people do.
Exactly. And that is so important and so critical. I've given talks and what they always say, well, Frank, how do you help someone get their mojo back? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's looking, that is that introspective looking. And I've talked to people and I said, look, did you really like your old life? Did you really like it? An hour commute each way, 10 hours in the job, 24 hours in a day, 12 hours you're doing something you really don't like. And then 8 hours you're sleeping or 6 hours you're sleeping or whatever it is. You don't have a life. Okay. You're a spectator in your life. And what I see you doing is saying, well, how do I become a participant? Let me help you become a participant in your life.
Exactly. I think a lot of it has to do too, and I don't mean to play the female card, but for women who are moms, we all have played this life, work, family balance. It's a lot.
It is.
How do you manage that? How do you find something to do for a living that allows you that work-life balance? That's what I'm in search of for others.
Exactly. And that's absolutely critical. I recall when I got into the corporate sector, I'm a lot older than you. So when we got into the corporate sector, they had said, that work-life balance, we talk about it, we put it in our annual report. It's crap.
Right.
They will suck every second of your life if you allow it to happen. And it's finding that boundary. What am I willing to do? What line am I not willing to cross? And how does that impact where my relationship is? Because I've seen people, including myself, who have climbed to the top of the mountain, become a CEO of 2 companies, put the flag in the mountain and say, I made it. You turn around and everything you love is gone. Was it worth it?
Because you're too busy trying to get to the goal and not enjoying the journey.
Absolutely.
That's something that a lot of us
absolutely
we need to work that out,
And ladies and gentlemen, if you are in the Albany, New York area, in that area, you need to see Connie. You need to see her. And once this is all complete and these certifications are in place, this is the kind of individual you want to be interacting with and get to know and have her inspire your life, given all she's been through. Just highly recommend you make sure you get to know Connie.
Okay.
With all you've been through, my friend, any last words you want to leave with all the viewers?
Well, I just think that every day you got to get up and do the best you can for yourself and for your family and for the people that you care about. And I think, you just got to always try to be your best. I tell my kids, don't do anything half-assed. If you're going to do it with gusto and go balls to the wall, and just do it without fear. I think a lot of the problem that we face with making changes in the what's next aspect of life is fear of failure and just plain fear.
Mhm.
Don't let your fear get in the way of your fate.
Absolutely. That's wonderful. Well, as I mentioned, ladies and gentlemen, we're just about out of time. I want to thank Connie one more time for this amazing story. She always makes me smile, and she has the best stories of all time. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, no matter what life throws at you, and you heard a bunch of stuff that life has thrown at Connie, please do 3 things. Look up, get up, never ever give up. Pick up the pieces, start moving forward, and better times and better people will come into your life. If you want more information about Connie, you can go to her website. You can contact me. I'll make sure it gets to her. Get her book, How Connie Got Her Rack Back.
Oh yeah, wait, I have it right here.
Yes, show the book.
Yeah. With a hot pink bra hanging off it.
The hot pink bra. You want to get this book. It will educate you as to what it is to go through, and it will make you laugh and make you smile. Now, if you want to see this show, it's on Roku TV or it's on my YouTube channel, Frank Zaccari. And I will send links to Connie, and she'll post them wherever Connie posts out everything she does, so the world can see that. If you go to the YouTube page, please subscribe. Now, let me leave you with this, as I do every week. None of us are in this alone. And the secret to walking on water is to know where the rocks are. And today, Connie has shown us where many of those rocks are. Join us again next week. We get into another life-altering event. Thanks again, Connie.
Thank you, Frank.